This is the story of a tour guide named Richard. He lived in a small village near Kaktovik, Alaska, where the land was frozen, the sea was wild, and polar bears roamed free. Richard loved his job. Every morning, he took tourists out on his boat, showing them the magic of the Arctic. He told stories passed down from his Inupiat elders, stories about the ice, the animals, and the deep connection his people had with nature. Richard often spoke about polar bears, or Nanook, as his people called them. Tourists were amazed to see them, but for Richard, they were not just animals, they were sacred. His people had lived alongside them for thousands of years. He felt proud to share that with the world. But one cold morning, something strange happened on the water, something that would stay in Richard's heart forever. It started like any other day. The sky was gray, the wind was cold, and the ocean moved gently beneath the boat. Richard, a local tour guide, sat quietly at the back of his small wooden boat, steering through the icy waters near Kaktovik. In front of him sat a group of tourists, wrapped in thick jackets, listening closely as he shared old stories about the land and his Inupiat culture. They were heading toward the Beaufort Sea when Richard noticed something wrong. The motor began to sputter, so he slowed the boat to take a look. That's when he spotted something strange, about 100 feet away, floating in the water. At first, it looked like a piece of ice, but as he squinted, the shape became clear. Richard's breath caught. It wasn't ice, it was a polar bear, but something was wrong. The polar bear wasn't swimming like it should. Its big paws moved slowly, and its head kept dipping into the water. It looked tired. Too tired. Like it was using all its strength just to stay above the surface. Richard's heart sank. He had lived in the Arctic his whole life and knew how polar bears behaved. This one wasn't hunting or playing. It was struggling, and badly. He slowed the boat and pointed toward the bear. "This isn't normal," he told the tourists. "Something's not right." Some of the tourists leaned forward, curious, but two of them looked scared. "Let's go," one said nervously. "This could be dangerous." Richard stayed calm. He told them the bear looked weak and might need help. It wasn't acting aggressive. He reminded them polar bears were protected animals, and that sometimes watching quietly was the best way to understand what was really happening. But the tourists were scared. They didn't want to take any chances. "Let's just go," one of them said. "It's too risky." Richard didn't want to leave, but he had to respect their wishes. With a heavy heart, he turned the boat around and took them to a nearby island where they could safely explore. As soon as they stepped off, he felt a strong pull in his chest. He had to go back. He hoped the bear would still be there. He hoped he wasn't too late. And when he returned, he saw it. The same bear, still in the water. But now something was different. The bear was swimming after his boat, slowly, weakly, but with purpose. That's when Richard saw the real problem. The bear wasn't just tired, it was trapped. A thick fishing net was wrapped tightly around its legs and belly. Every time it moved, the net got tighter. The poor animal must have been stuck for hours, maybe more. Richard's heart broke. It wasn't trying to attack. It was asking for help. He couldn't just watch, he had to do something. He grabbed a rope from the boat and tied a loop. With steady hands, he tossed it toward the bear, trying not to scare it. The loop landed perfectly on the first try. Richard pulled gently, trying to keep the bear afloat. But the bear was huge, almost 900 pounds. His arms ached, but he didn't stop. The bear thrashed in panic, but Richard held on tight, praying someone, anyone, might come by to help. He was alone, but he wasn't giving up. He radioed a nearby station and asked for emergency support. His voice was calm, But inside, he was panicking. Time was running out. The polar bear was getting weaker with every passing minute, and Richard didn't know how much longer it could hold on. He kept one hand tightly on the rope, trying to keep the bear's head above water. His muscles burned, his arms ached, but he refused to let go. Then, in the distance, he saw something, a small boat cutting across the cold ocean. But it wasn't the research team. It was something better. A group of Inupiat fishermen who had seen the struggle from afar. They knew something was wrong, and without hesitation, they came to help. They didn't stop to ask questions. They didn't wait for instructions. They tied their boats to Richard's and grabbed the ropes. Now, 3 boats were working together. 3 sets of hands, pulling, balancing, holding the bear up. Still, the bear was panicking. It thrashed in the water, sending waves crashing and boats rocking. But they didn't give up. Then, finally, the researchers arrived. They came quickly and didn't waste time. One scientist loaded a tranquilizer dart and aimed carefully. "This will calm him down," he said. "Give it a few minutes." They fired the dart, and then everyone waited, holding their ropes tight, hearts pounding. Slowly, the bear began to relax. Its massive body stopped fighting. Its muscles loosened. The fear in its eyes faded. Now came the hardest part, getting the bear to shore. With great effort, the group pulled the bear across the water and onto a nearby beach. The sand was cold and rough, but it was better than the freezing sea. All of them together pushed and pulled until the bear lay safely on the shore. That's when they saw just how bad it was. Thick fishing net was wrapped tightly around the bear's legs, belly, and neck. The ropes had cut into its fur and skin. It must have been stuck for hours, maybe even a whole day. Carefully, the fishermen and scientists began cutting the net loose. They worked slowly, bit by bit, making sure not to hurt the bear. One wrong move and the bear might wake up too early, or worse, get injured more. Everyone was silent, focused, careful. Finally, after what felt like forever, the last piece of the net was removed. Then something happened that made the fishermen freeze. One of the scientists opened a medical bag. Inside were syringes, tools, and plastic tracking tags. "Don't hurt the Nanook," one fisherman shouted. His voice was sharp and scared. For the Inupiat, polar bears, Nanook were sacred. They had always protected them. Over the years, they had watched many scientists come and go, studying the animals but rarely helping them. They didn't trust them completely. Richard stepped in, standing between the 2 groups. "Wait," he said gently. "Let's hear them out." He looked at the scientists. "What are you doing?" One replied, "We just want to check him for injuries and place a tag. So if he's ever in danger again, we can find him and help." They spoke with calm voices, with respect. Richard believed them. The team moved gently, checking the bear's paws, eyes, and breathing. Then, with care, they placed a small plastic tracker behind his shoulder. No pain, no harm, just a way to watch over him from afar. Richard nodded. The fishermen relaxed. Then they stepped back and gave the bear space. Minutes passed. Then the bear stirred. It rolled over, shook the sand from its thick fur, and slowly stood up. It looked around, its dark eyes meeting theirs. And then, it walked to the ocean and swam away, free again. Everyone stood in silence. Then someone began to cheer. Smiles spread. Tears fell. They had saved a life, together. And in that moment, something changed. Not just for the bear, but for the people too.